trust in organizations. Rasanath Prabhu brings a unique blend of high intensity corporate experience and monastic inner work to his workshops and coaching. He coaches numerous leaders across multiple verticals, ranging from hedge funds to tech startups. Rasanath Prabhu has been profiled in the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, CNN, and PBS. He has a bachelor's in engineering from the Indian Institute of Technology, IIT, and an MBA from Cornell University. So Prabhuji is very highly accomplished. Material we heard, of course, definitely spiritual, that you will get to know when you hear from him. So we'll invite him with again a big round of applause.
Thank you for having me here. So what's the structure? How long do we have? Okay. So I typically give a very short, I just set the stage, and I would like to give more time for interaction so that the material that we discuss is, you can actually customize it for your own life in terms of where it is right now. I will just start with some prayers so that we can orient ourselves to real listening and taking in, really opening our hearts and our minds to absorb this knowledge that's coming from very many great teachers and from Krishna himself. Okay. Om Ajnanatirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manovishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So I asked Arjunananda Prabhu what topics would be helpful for all of you. And he gave me a topic which was called Overcoming Anxiety. And that topic gave me anxiety too. The reason why the topic gave me anxiety is when we talk about overcoming anxiety, uh, it's a very big promise. Uh, there are industries running on this promise that if you, sometimes it's just medical industry, if you take this, if you take these medicines, you'll be able to overcome your anxiety. Of course, self-help. There are a lot of books, there are a lot of workshops, there are a lot of talks that delve into this topic of overcoming anxiety. And so the reason why I felt anxiety about it is because I haven't been able to do it myself. So I'm not, I'm not sitting here as an expert. And the second reason why I felt anxiety is because it is truly overwhelming. We talk about overcoming anxiety. It's a very big promise to make. You can overcome anxiety one day. So what I thought is it would be very helpful for us to actually understand what anxiety is first, before we think about overcoming it. Because when we talk about overcoming anxiety, we are so desperate to overcome anxiety because we feel it so intensely. that in the desperation itself creates more anxiety. See, anxiety is a very interesting. I don't know if any of you have experienced this. I've frequently experienced this. That, and this happens. So I have two kids, and my oldest, she'll only sleep with me. She's 5 years old, and she'll wake up in the middle of the night sometimes and would want to engage with you in a conversation. And then she'll fall back asleep. But once you're woken up, and it's hard for you to fall back asleep, and you only have a limit. You have to wake up in the morning. So I observe my own mind, and what happens is I'm trying to fall asleep. It's like 3 o'clock, 3:20, 3:25, 3:30, and then I start becoming anxious about not falling asleep. Will that help me fall asleep? No. Right? That was just an example of how anxiety, the kernel of anxiety, and the layers that are wrapped around it just exacerbate the whole experience of anxiety. So many times when we are so desperate to overcome anxiety, that itself becomes a form of anxiety that creates more complication. You know? So I think the first thing we have to do is understand what anxiety is. So what do you think anxiety is? Yes, hesitation. Okay, it's about worrying about the future. Okay, worrying about the future. That is definitely true. What else? Overthinking. Yes, it manifests as overthinking. Absolutely. Very interesting. Things not going our way, and we want for it to go our way. Anyone experience this? Okay. So things not going our way, and we want for it to go our way. Uh, right. That's a very immediately, right. It gives you anxiety. I was coming here. There were heavy delays in the subway, and I started experiencing anxiety because I wanted to be here on time. And I walked very fast, um, and I could hear my heart race. True, very true. Anything else? Any other experience? How do you experience anxiety? Yes.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. So I work in a lab in Wild Cornell. So I also face a lot of anxiety, but that's mainly because, like, say, the experiments that we do in the laboratory. So out of 100, like 80 of them fail, and then we may finally do like 20, which gives good results, or like. So I'm constantly thinking about the failed experiments and like all the things I'm doing to troubleshoot them, and then it's not working. So that gives me a lot of anxiety, especially when I'm trying to sleep. So I can't, sometimes they are in my head because I have deadlines and,
Right.
like grant submission and all that. So it's very difficult. So it gives a lot of anxiety. So I would say that my anxiety stem from like what I'm unable to do, or I'm trying my best to do, but still I'm not being able to
That's
reach
right.
there.
So very similar to what's your name? Jitesh. Very similar to what Jitesh said. You want things to go a certain way, but they're not going that way. So, any other experience of anxiety? Yes.
When we have any pressure, external pressure due to time, or let's say some test or a deadline, some big exam, do or die situation kind of stuff.
Right. Yes, definitely. Right. There are some constraints. So time is a constraint that you experience. Yes. Then you experience tests. You experience anxiety. Anybody would. I don't know if this is true, but do people still dream about their 10th grade exams? Okay. I have constant dreams, but these are my dreams, right? Like 10th grade exams. Very weirdly, the exam was supposed to have started at 9:30, and I woke up from bed and the time is 12. And I've had numerous dreams like that. I still live in the trauma of constraints. And yeah, we sort of relive it. Right? It's a real experience. Good. Anything else? Yes.
Yes, Prabhu.
What's that? Very broad spectrum. That's true. Very broad spectrum.
So it's kind of like very different from people to people, like what they experience. For me, I used to have like palpitations. My heart rate used to go really high. It used to be like 120 beats per minute, and there were like perspirations and stuff. And I used to like constantly, think about what's gonna happen, what's gonna happen, if I die, So this is something which is very, some people have like anxiety which is very like silent. They won't be even talking about
Correct.
it. So it's a very
Yeah,
big
absolutely.
spectrum.
How people express their anxiety can have a very wide range. Some people put on music when they're in anxiety, and that's a sign that they're in anxiety. Yeah, true. Very true. Yes.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
There will be, I want to explain about two cases of the anxiety, I mean, in my life. Actually, the first one is uh, listening of false information from others. Example for about the visa status. I mean, yeah, you're actually overthinking about the thing which is not happened yet, actually. Yeah, they are saying about the deportations and something, and they're seeing the various YouTube channels and they're creating their anxiety for themselves. Actually, yeah, nothing has been announced yet officially, but people are overthinking about it. I mean, delusional anxiety, actually. Their delusion is creating anxiety for them,
Yeah,
actually.
true.
Yeah.
Very true.
And
WhatsApp.
yeah.
A lot of WhatsApp messages produce anxiety. Yes. What else?
And misunderstanding, actually. If others misunderstand you, maybe your loved ones misunderstand you and your actions, that will be
Jesus.
you cannot bear them, and that will automatically create anxiety.
Yes. Okay, lots. Any more? What haven't we covered? That's at the back.
Yeah, whenever I do something wrong, knowingly or unknowingly, and whenever I realize that I have done some mistake, then I feel anxious.
Okay. Something wrong, right? And it could be from a whole range of things. Where so when you say wrong, is it a mistake? Meaning, is it a you were at work and you did something wrong, or is it like
Yeah, so in any context, so
any
when
context?
yeah, it's more from your side, not from other side.
Okay, okay, okay. Thank you. Um, what else? Does anybody else want to share? Yes, it's the last one, and then we'll move forward. Time pressure, yes, absolutely.
I think losing out on opportunities, getting rejections and stuff like that. So I'd say those two criteria definitely add to a lot of anxiety.
Okay. Have you heard about choice creating anxiety?
Yes.
Okay. The paradox of choice. Yeah. When you have, it is actually reported that when people have three good jobs, they're in anxiety. Right? So when some people have no jobs, they have been applying and there is nothing that's coming. Some people have three jobs and they're actually in anxiety because this is the concern. If I choose one, what if that the one that I choose is not the one? In fact, statistically, it's actually reported that people are happier when decisions are made for them than when they have to make decisions. Okay. So the amazing part about anxiety is it's not that people experience anxiety only when. So here's the other thing. This is I work with a lot of people across so many different industries, and you know, um, so here's a couple who have wanted children for a very long time. Okay, they were in tremendous anxiety, and then finally, when they were not expecting, they were told the news that they were pregnant. What did they experience? Anxiety. They were in anxiety because yes, they were excited that wow, okay, but then suddenly now it opens up a whole other thing that they were just not ready for. So it creates anxiety. So it's not that only bad news or difficult circumstances produce anxiety. Even good circumstances produce anxiety. Seemingly good circumstances produce anxiety, right? So what we have to understand by this word anxiety is everybody, there is not one single living entity, and I'm not just saying in the human species. I'm actually saying across the, if you observe animals, also there is a sense of anxiety. This is a very existential experience of life in this material world. So if somebody tells you that, pretty cool, I don't have any anxiety, it's a lie. Everybody is experiencing universal experience. And it exists even in good circumstances. Because why? Why does it exist in good circumstances too? So we understand that anxiety exists in difficult circumstances. But why does anxiety exist in good circumstances? Yes. Very good. Pressure to maintain the good circumstance. Right, excellent. So once you get something, then what happens? There is fear. Thank you so much. There is fear of. Thank you so much. There is fear of what? Losing it. Right, so, and then even when there are good circumstances, when people get promoted, they're very excited on the day off. And then after that, they experience a very important, I would say, this is a very well discussed topic called imposter syndrome, where suddenly the feeling is that, oh my God, I might not be qualified for the position that I was promoted to. And so they're experiencing anxiety. So the anxiety is a very universal experience. And so Krishna in the Gita, he doesn't talk about anxiety. So in the modern day context of the world, when we talk about anxiety, there is a way in which our relationship with anxiety is actually skewed, in the sense it is actually talked about as a disorder or a problem. If you're anxious, then you have a problem. It's sort of the message around it is that there are people who don't experience anxiety, and then there are people who experience anxiety, and you're not in the category of people who don't experience anxiety, so there must be a problem with you. And Krishna, the Gita, right at the onset of the Gita, right, what is Arjuna experiencing? Severe anxiety. Right? So the introduction of Arjuna's character in the Gita is as someone who's actually experiencing extreme anxiety. And Krishna, through that example, very clearly is outlining that anxiety is the normal state of existence in the material world. This is the fact that we are, and this is what we have to really understand. The fact that we are born in this material world itself produces anxiety. Right? Think about a baby in the womb, and when it's coming out of the womb, you know how crazy the experience is when you're pushed suddenly. you are, you know, when the lungs develop for the baby. Any idea? What? Well, 37 weeks, right? Like, and then what the baby, just imagine the baby in the stomach, you know, there's amniotic fluid, and the baby doesn't know how to breathe, right? The lungs don't work. We don't really think about these things. It's breathing like a fish, actually. Like, that's how a baby is breathing inside. Suddenly, it's pushed out. Can you imagine what the baby is experiencing? Right. So the whole idea of the material world, it's Krishna's definition in the eighth chapter of the Gita. He calls it Dukhalayam Ashashvatam. Right. He's categorically named the material world as a storehouse of misery. Right? Which means by our very dint of existence here, anxiety is our companion. Right? So then, why is Krishna introducing Arjuna in the Gita, in the first chapter of the Gita? We see Arjuna as someone who is experiencing extreme anxiety. Does anyone know what the name of the first chapter of the Gita is? What does it mean? Okay. Yeah, okay. Right. But every chapter of the Gita is called a yoga, right? So, what is yogic about sadness? Why is it called Arjuna Vishada Yoga? The yoga of Arjuna's despair. Why? It's because it's only through anxiety and the experience of suffering do we wake up to who we truly are. Okay, so this is a very important thing to understand, and Krishna is very comprehensive, very clear. As soon as we are identified with something, as soon as we are attached to something, right, we think we are these bodies. We think this is mine. The moment that relationship develops, anxiety will be there. Because, as we discussed in many different ways, when we have something, we are afraid of losing it. Right? When we want things to go a certain way, we want to what? Control things. Right? So this is the source. The source of anxiety is attachment and control. Right? And that comes with having, when we know, think about this material body, right? What is the one thing with the material body? We know. There are many things we don't know about this material body. We don't know how things are functioning inside. But what is the one thing we know when we are born? We will die. Right? This is, we know it. Right? There is a clock ticking. Right? So at that moment itself, the anxiety begins. See, it's so baked into the system. Right? So, but here is the other thing. Krishna, in the second chapter of the Gita, he addresses Arjuna's anxiety head on by saying, Dehinosmin yatha dehe kaumaram yavanam jara tatha dehantara praktir dhirastatra na muhyati. Matra Sprashastu Kaunteya Shitoshna Sukha Dukkada Agama Apayino Anityastam Tatikshasva Bharata. What he says is that, Arjuna, the embodied soul, once you're identified with your physical body, which you're not, the physical body is what? It's temporary. By the dint of how it's made, it's temporary. And because it's temporary, it's going to die. But what is permanent is the soul. Right? So as soon as the soul has identified itself with, as soon as the soul, which is permanent, has identified itself with something that's temporary, what do you experience? Anxiety. Fundamentally. And then everything else, right? Everything else, like getting a job, maintaining a family, is just an extension of thinking that I am this material body. Right? They are just more expansions and projections of the most fundamental anxiety, which is the soul that is eternal has identified itself with something that's temporary. Right? Which is why overcoming anxiety is not a situational thing, it's a spiritual thing. It is a spiritual problem. And as much as we can try to address it materially, we will still find it's incomplete. Because your solutions, whatever solutions we employ, will only give us some temporary relief. But with that temporary relief also comes the fear that when will things catch up again? Right? So for someone who has lost something and then gained it back, they're also afraid of losing it again. So this is the basis of the Gita, which is why the concept of overcoming anxiety is such a tall order, because it has no material solution. And the reason why anxiety exists is to wake us up to our real self, the soul. So when we redefine our relationship with anxiety, when we think about anxiety not as a thing that we should be running away from, but important to lean into it and understand, well, why does it exist? And what is it actually trying to tell me? Many times, what it's trying to tell me is a message that I don't want to hear. And the more we keep running, the more the bigger the anxiety becomes. Right? So it's important to lean in and understand, and that's why Krishna in the Gita is very directly head-on addressing that the concept of anxiety originates from the eternal soul identifying itself with a temporary body. This is it. And so once you start to really tackle that issue, every other form of anxiety will collapse. So I'd like to stop here, take some reflections and questions. Yes.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So, Prabhuji, I'm trying to, in my case, I feel like I've given up a lot that I had back in India and I've taken a risk to come here.
Right.
And at every step, there's anxiety. I think everyone can relate to me as well, since most of us are students, we don't know what's happening next. We're just giving it our best. I'm trying to practice actually, give your best and leave the rest to Krishna. But even after that, you still feel anxious at every step. You try to meditate, you try to calm yourself down. But what can you actually do to curb such temporary situations that you have? Because you said that you're the soul and
That's right.
Of course, it'll take a long time to reach that stage of curbing anxiety.
It's so. Thank you. Thank you for asking that question. We are still in the. So when we talk about understanding that we are the soul, and we still experience the anxiety because we have not fully realized that we are the soul. It is important, which is why Krishna immediately in chapter 2, I just recited the verse a little while ago. Matras parshastu kaunteya shitoshna sukha dukkada agma apaino anityas tam titikshasva bharata. What he says is, until you reach the stage where the nature of the soul becomes more and more evident, there is only one thing you can do: tolerate. And that's not a escapist answer. Right? It's an answer that we don't necessarily want to hear. But the reason why Krishna says tolerate is because it is important to know how spiritual life works. Anxiety has a way of gradually, if we deal with anxiety well, healthily, which means tolerating it well, it has the capacity to dissolve the ego in time. Right? So the anxiety itself becomes the medium through which the ego actually dissolves and the soul comes forth. So when we do experience those moments, it is important to have a system that helps us tolerate it. Right? So a close group of friends who you can vocalize it with and get some perspective, support. Right? That's one way of tolerating. Another way of tolerating is I have found it very helpful to sometimes journal, write about what I am feeling anxious about, and see outside, look at it outside of myself. That doesn't mean the circumstance is going to change, but my capacity to hold the anxiety increases. Okay. Another way of dealing with anxiety or tolerating anxiety is learning to let go a little. So even when we say, I have left everything to God, this is funny, coming from India, I can share this example. You know how sometimes when you're watching a cricket game, and I mean, beकार shot खेला, I mean, like they're definitely going to lose. I've turned off the TV. Okay, I've turned it off. हारने वाला है. But somehow, after 5 minutes, I'm still tempted to check the score. I've not become fully detached. I've somehow, in frustration, let go. Right? But I have not dissociated. That is not detachment. Right? That is just distancing myself a little bit from facing so much pressure. But we have to learn what actual detachment looks like. And actual detachment means from our heart being able to say, whatever comes, I will accept. So acceptance is another form of tolerance of anxiety. Right? And that is, again, something that we have to learn how to do. Those were just some broad examples. Okay.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Yes.
Thank you so much for the insightful words. So you mentioned about when Krishna says Dukkhalayam Ashashvatam, and then again Krishna in one of the verse also says Prasannatmana Shochate na Kankshate. So this sounds very much paradox to me always, because once he himself tells us that this place is meant to for the suffering and nothing is permanent, and then he himself is saying that the prasannatmana shochate. So you're not even supposed to cry over things and not desire things. So how does that paradox works?
So so when Krishna says Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma, na shochati na kankshati, samasarveshu bhuteshu mad bhaktim labate param. So one who has reached the Brahma Bhuta stage, that person, there is no kanksha, there is no desire, right? Because that person materially, there is nothing more to be done in this material world because I've already reached a stage where I'm so deeply absorbed in the spiritual that the matter actually doesn't matter to me anymore. Right? Life can go on and it doesn't make any difference because I'm not connected to this material world anymore. My sense of belonging has completely shifted. So there were two kinds of people in university that were very peaceful before exams. One was people who had worked really hard and they were ready to end, and the other, the other was, yo, you know, so in between 60%, 70%, the bell curve, they were all in anxiety. So the Brahma Buddhas are like the people who, they're so well accomplished. They have passed the material exam, right? And they have reached a very different stage where now the hold of the material world is just not there. So what about us who are still living in this material world? How should we operate? Um, there is no easy solution. And this is something that what Krishna says in the Gita. We have desires, we have material desires, we have attachments. Those attachments have to be gradually purified. Okay, it doesn't happen overnight, which requires. It's like when you have a disease. I was just reading it on the subway. Sometimes you read things that are just so poignant. And Srila Prabhupada it was in a lecture. He was saying how the disease doesn't get cured as soon as you get the medicine. You pop in the medicine and say, okay, well, I'm still sick. No, the sickness it's there, right? But you have to continue taking the medicine. You have to tolerate the sickness. And you also have to do things that don't make the sickness worse, right? So what we are inherently wanting is, "अरे, मेरे को एक गोली दे दो," and everything doesn't work that way. And this is exactly the same thing that Krishna is telling when it comes to going to reaching the Brahma Bhuta stage, which is actually a stage of full health. You have to take the medicine. You have to tolerate the sickness. And you have to make sure that the conditions that created the sickness, you're no longer engaging in those. But we don't acknowledge that we are sick. That's why anxiety is a sign of existential sickness. And what it's helping us do is acknowledge. That's why our relationship with anxiety has to change. But when we say, yes, I'm sick, I'm spiritually sick, and then when we turn to the Gita, and do the three things that Krishna is saying. Take the medicine, tolerate the sickness, and clear out the conditions that created it. Then we walk towards Brahmabhuta stage. Clear?
Thank you so much.
Of course.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
I'm working on a research, like I'm the only member of that research team. And the thing is, currently, like now I'm like a little calm, but as the date approaches, I'm getting more and more anxious about about my research. The thing is, I'm stuck somewhere, and like I'm asking everybody, every professor, every student I can get there. I'm getting their idea, but I'm not getting solution, and this is making me more and more anxious as the days pass. So like in such a case, how can I like?
What will happen if you don't get the? What will happen if you don't?
Basically, it will affect my grades.
It'll affect your
grades.
grades.
And if it's like it's successful, then yeah, it will help me get a good job.
Okay. So there's a lot dependent on it. How much can you control?
I think 15 days before the submission.
Yeah, but how much of this can you actually control? How much of it do you actually control?
I don't. No idea.
No idea. Okay. So when you can't control the outcome, what can you do?
Try my best, maybe.
Try your best. Right. And the most important thing here is to actually focus on your effort. Because a lot of valuable emotional energy is wasted. We try to control things that we can't actually control. And I'm not saying that those thoughts will not cross your mind. It's hard. And yet, what else can we do but put our best effort in the right direction?
Yeah.
Right? But what we also have to do, and this is the important piece, the world will not understand that. Even you tell people that, well, I did my best, because the world looks at everything from a point of view of outcome.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Krishna looks at it from a point of view of effort. That is the difference between material vision and spiritual vision. So we have to take heart in the fact that God sees it very differently. And even if now, my hope is that it results in something that you want. And that hope only rests because God sees it differently, not the world. The world will not see it that way. I wish I could have.
Yeah. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you.
Prabhu, I want to ask that what is the one question that we should ask ourselves daily that can help to overcome or not overcome, to get along with the anxiety?
On a very practical level, we have to ask ourselves the question, well, what can I control? And what am I trying to control that I can't? So everybody knows what surfing is, right? Anybody surfed here before? You know what surfing is? Not internet surfing. I'm talking about the actual surfing. So you know what surfing is, right? Probably seen videos or pictures of people surfing. So a surfer, a long time ago, actually, my memory is also pretty vague about it, but this person was saying he loves to surf, and he said that one of the biggest lessons that a surfer learns, actually the biggest lesson that a surfer learns, he said the surfer is somebody who's very good at surfing has actually understood that the ocean is in charge, not me. Think about it. When you're going into the ocean, who's actually in control? Right? So, and us puny human beings, think about the vastness of the ocean. Think about how, and yet somebody who's actually riding the waves of the ocean, that person understands the ocean is in charge. The ocean chooses to give me control and take control away from me. And my job is to know when the ocean is asking me to relinquish control and when the ocean is asking me to take control. Think about how we can live life that way. You're saying you have multiple things in control. Okay, if you have multiple things in control, that's a very good thing. Because a lot of things are in control at this moment, at least. Right? Then why are you in anxiety? Aha, aha. Okay, so you want everything in control. You know what that is?
It's not complex.
So, so you're saying that which one should you control in order to how to set the priorities?
Priorities right in the situation of an anxiety.
In the situation of a
Anxiety.
how to set your priorities right in when you're in anxiety.
Anxiety, yeah.
Okay, you have to talk to someone who can help you. Because when you're in anxiety, your mind is not in a place where it can actually understand priorities well. So you have to talk to someone. That's why Arjuna talks to Krishna. Shishyasteham shadimam tvam prapannam. Right? The reason why Arjuna is doing that is because you need an outsider's perspective. So you need to have at least one or two really good friends who know you well, who you deeply trust, who can actually say, okay, I think this is how you need to prioritize. This is the reason why. Okay, that's what I do. Because when you're in anxiety, it's hard to think clearly. And we tend to make choices out of fear. We tend to make short-term decisions versus long-term decisions. So we need somebody in our lives who helps us prioritize. Go find that person.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, thank you so much for the talk. My question is any kind of anxiety favorable to bhakti?
Thank you. All kinds. Every single anxiety is favorable to bhakti. In fact, I was sharing earlier how the whole concept of anxiety, as introduced by the Gita, the first chapter is actually talking about anxiety as a yoga. Arjuna Vishada Yoga is actually saying how anxiety becomes the stepping stone to one's spiritual life. So, in fact, what you understand in the Bhagavatam, which is actually the graduate study of the Gita, where bhakti is exemplified, you just read stories about people in anxiety. One after another after another. Their circumstances have been difficult. But how they use the anxiety as a way to turn deeper to God. Because what they recognize when they fall in anxiety is, I am not the controller. You know how many times we need to hear this? I'm not the controller. I'm not. The ego hates it because the ego wants exactly the opposite. I am, you are the controller. Ishwaro ham bhogi siddho balavan sukhi. Krishna says in the 16th chapter of the Gita that the ego by nature, 16th chapter is called divine and demoniac natures. The definition, Krishna says the ego, the way the ego works, Ishwaro aham, I am the Lord. Aham bhogi, I am the enjoyer. Siddhoham, I have accomplished all of these things. Right? That is what the ego wants to hear. Right? And when we experience anxiety, that notion of the ego is actually brought into question. The recognition that I am not the supreme. Right? The recognition that I am actually not in charge. The recognition that I have to let go of what I'm attached to. The recognition that I have to turn to Krishna. So every form of anxiety, when the Bhagavatam looks at it, every single form of anxiety is somehow sublimated as a way of surrendering to Krishna. And that is the vision of a devotee. And so when one becomes that's why we are discussing anxiety, because our whole topic is when you experience it, when you're experiencing anxiety, how do you use that as a way to go closer to your real self? Right? Is the entire art. And there is this beautiful writer that I often read and quote also. His name is Richard Rohr. He is a Franciscan friar. And he says this statement. He says that in the process of avoiding necessary suffering, we create a lot of unnecessary suffering. I'll repeat it. In the process of avoiding necessary suffering, we create a lot of unnecessary suffering. So the fact that we are in this material world means there will be suffering. But when we try to artificially avoid that suffering, we create more and more suffering. When we use that suffering as an impetus, turn to Krishna, the purpose of that suffering is fulfilled. And you know what is even more powerful? This is the amazing thing. When you read the life of saints, which is why the Bhagavatam is such an amazing example, Krishna uses their suffering to save so many people from their suffering. So in God's economy, even suffering is not wasted. This is also from Richard Rohr. So that's how a devotee looks at in bhakti. And then when it's done under right guidance, if you have good mentors, people who are guiding you, they will actually really be able to tell you how to use that situation to come closer to Krishna. Does that help?
I think that's fine. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, last question, and then we'll close for tonight. There's one question here.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So just echoing from your points from before about building tolerance to anxiety, how do you build tolerance to anxiety when you're faced with a challenge? There's the option to escape from it is always there, like an easy escape, like procrastinating from it happens very easily when you're present with anxiety. So how do you build a tolerance to stick with it and go through it, even though you know that this process is going to cause more anxiousness, but you just have to go through it and the habit of escaping from it, procrastinating from it, can be broken, basically.
There are two things that are important. One is we need to have a vision for what comes after. Right? And we follow examples. So examples are critical. So that's one very important thing. The second thing is have accountability. Someone who will not let you escape. We at Upbuild we do this. We talk about different topics as podcasts. We find a lot of topics on our website, more than 70 different topics that we have discussed. One topic is called accountability. What does accountability mean, and how you hold yourself accountable? Again, bring someone into your life who will actually not let you escape. When you have that accountability, it creates a mechanism where even when you want to, the other person will compassionately, empathically make sure that you don't. Right? Anyone done weight training here? Anyone done weight training? Okay. You have somebody called a spotter when you have weight training. You need a spotter in your life. Yeah. Good. All right then. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. All the best.
Thank you so much, Rasanath Prabhu. So I'm sure everybody was like at least got few valuable points from the session. So in order to say thanks, so we just applaud very loudly to thank Rasanath Prabhu. So, thank you so much. So, Prabhu, just a quick question, not even a question. So, from the session, there's a journey, because the saints, they say that when we are successful, we need to offer our success to Krishna, and when we are not successful, we should offer, we should say that there might be some lack on my end, on my efforts, like, right? But right now in the world, people, when they are successful, they say it's because of me, and when they are, not successful, they say because, this world is meant for misery, like what we were talking about. So, is there any shortcut to, cover this path from from current condition of taking credits and not giving credit to Krishna, but yes, giving credit for the not being successful, to actually giving credit for our success too?
I should say it's been a journey for me too. It takes honesty. It takes a lot of honesty and the practice of honesty. And it begins, that's why, you know what the meaning, the literal translation of the meaning of the word sadhu is? Sadhu is an honest person. And that honesty doesn't mean I don't cheat. Meaning like, when I'm paying somebody something, I pay less. That's not what this honesty. Honesty is emotional honesty. Really looking at our lives and really seeing, well, what do I have? I mean, think about it. What do I have to really take credit for? Did I even create my body and my mind? And when you answer that question very honestly, like for us to, how much control do we have on anything? When we genuinely, honestly answer that question, we'll find that there is very little, very little. Right? And so if you choose to live our life honestly, then the idea of choosing to live our life honestly is giving credit where credit is due. Right? So when you say that a devotee offers success to God, That is actually a devotee's practice of honesty. It is not like, oh, okay, I've gotten this, I have to go in. It's not an obligatory thing. If we are emotionally honest, we know where the credit needs to go. It is actually that simple. Right? So we have to practice living honestly. And so if we look at our lives and really think about what have I truly accomplished by my own means. I didn't have, I was not in charge of creating this body, nor this mind. Even driving a car, for example, I didn't build the car. I say this is my car, just because I paid money for it. We over-index. It's called fictitious self-importance. That's what we are addicted to. We are all addicts. We are addicted to fictitious self-importance. That is the definition of the ego. The more we try to become honest in our lives, the more that will change. So start by learning how to give credit where credit is due. Okay.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Thank you. Yes, that was so thought-provoking that we have to be honest and detached, right? And now we have another segment of program for you where you can actually practice detachment. So we have a team of devotees who are gonna do kirtan for us, for the Lordship, and for Prabhupada, and then we can be detached from our ego of how good we dance, and we can fully dance to the tunes of Krishna. So let's everybody stand up, and I invite Braj Mohan Prabhu, Hadai Pran Prabhu, and Jayananda Prabhu on the stage